Overnight, despite a flare-up in the Middle East, President Trump saying the fragile ceasefire with Iran is still in effect.
Is the ceasefire with Iran still on?
Yeah, it is. They trifled with us today. We blew them away. They trifled. I call that a trifle.
The attacks escalating the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz.
They were firing at us, and we were firing back at them. And our firepower was a hell of a lot stronger than theirs, and they knocked the hell out of them.
U.S. Central Command said Iran fired missiles and launched drones and small boats at 3 American destroyers, enforcing a naval blockade in the region. CENTCOM calling the attacks, quote, unprovoked, and said U.S. forces responded with self-defense strikes targeting military facilities and drone launch sites in Iran, while Iran said it was the U.S. who fired first and that its attacks were defensive. Now, as negotiations continue, the president pressuring Iran.
You won't have to know. If there's no ceasefire, you're not going to have to know. You're just going to have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran. And they better sign their agreement fast.
Tehran says it's considering an American proposal to extend the ceasefire and open the critical Strait of Hormuz. The president adamant.
It cannot have a nuclear bomb, and it's not going to have.
And Willie, we just heard from the Iranians. They condemned the fighting last night, calling it an aggressive action, a violation of the ceasefire, and they said they will not bow to pressure. Willie?
Bradley in Tel Aviv for us. Matt, thank you.
Let's get into more of this about the war, its impact here at home with those gas prices, and turn to Kristen Welker, moderator of Meet the Press. Hi, Kristen. Good morning. So before we talk about the gas prices and the impact at home, let's talk about where things stand with the war. The president saying the ceasefire is on, but we do see these hostilities continue.
Well, Savannah, it's so good to be with you. And you're right. And look, it's just not clear exactly what the strategy is right now, given all of that mixed messaging and particularly given the hostilities overnight. But in terms of the broader messaging, President Trump has said, look, he wants to make a deal with Iran. He says he believes Iran wants to make a deal with the United States, even though, Savannah, there's a lot of skepticism about how serious Iran is about that. What is striking to me, these diplomatic negotiations seem to be converging around a short-term deal that would punt, addressing the core reason President Trump said he got into this war, which is getting rid of Iran's nuclear program. Now, again, there has been mixed messaging this week that has raised questions about what the actual strategy is. For example, President Trump at one point saying the U.S. was going to escort vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. He even sent his Secretary of State to talk about that in the White House briefing room, but then hours later abruptly canceled that plan amid pushback from Gulf allies. And of course, looming large over all of this, the incredibly fragile ceasefire that Matt was just talking about. It's being consistently tested as the war remains deeply unpopular with Americans in poll after poll, Savannah and Willie.
Yeah, Kristen, unpopular domestically because of gas prices and the impacts of the war on those. They continue to rise. How concerned is the White House about the president's own political fate because of the war?
Privately, there is a lot of concern because gas prices are central, not just to the way the public views President Trump, but frankly, to the Republican Party overall. The latest polls that we are seeing show just how impactful gas prices have been for Americans. This is a new NPR PBS Marist poll out this week. It shows 37% approve of the job the president is doing. But look at this, 59% disapprove. That's the highest disapproval number across President Trump's 2 terms. And those numbers are being dragged down by the economy, by gas prices. That same poll showing 8 in 10 Americans say gas prices are putting a real strain on their household budget. If we just want to zoom out for a second, this is causing concern within the Republican Party. The midterms, of course, just months away. I had a Republican strategist telling me overnight, if these gas prices don't start to come down within about 6 weeks, this is going to become even more dire for Republicans. And the challenge, of course, even if the war were to end tomorrow, guys, it could take months to get the energy infrastructure back online.
Well, speaking of challenges, the president is set to travel to China. This was a summit that was postponed because of the war in Iran. And no, the agenda is trade, but this issue with Iran is going to come up. China buys a lot of its oil from Iran.
It sure will. And Savannah, you're right. Look, the top issue that they'll talk about trade, whether the two economic rivals can make any new deals. But Savannah, you're right. Iran is going to be front and center, especially considering China buys more than 80% of Iran's shipped oil. That's according to one analytics firm. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this week pressing China to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is key to its energy supply. And while the president did cancel that trip once, as you mentioned, it seems like right now all systems are a go for this trip, which may be a welcome distraction if the war is still ongoing. Savannah.
Kristen Welker, you have a lot to discuss Sunday. Good thing it's a whole hour. Meet the Press. We'll see you then, bright and early.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.